Hello, we are live. I'm just going to give it a little bit to make sure this is working and that everything is good in OBS before transitioning over, and I have our chat open. So feel free to pop in and ask questions as we go. If you are brand new to Dark, I wanted to let you know that we just released on our YouTube channel a new playlist. The new playlist is an introduction, and it goes through all of the core concepts. We can see if once we have comments already. And so feel free to watch all of those if you're just getting started and you kind of want a little bit of the overview of what it's like to use Dark. Since you might not have done that yet, if you're new here, this is the canvas. It is where we program when we're working in Dark. In the sidebar, we can create all of our major types of components, API endpoints, all REST, background workers, cron. If you're one of the people who's asked before about better documentation on each of these, we've also this week added more in-depth documents about both of these. So you can now read a lot more about how the workers work, including an FAQ, and a lot more about the details of cron and the cron scheduler as well. So if you're an infrastructure person and you want to get into that, I definitely recommend it. So beyond that, I guess let's get started working with Spotify. I wanted to do Spotify just because it's fun. Most people have a Spotify account. We're going to look at adding some Spotify package manager functions, and I just figured that'd be a nice one to get started with. If you have not used the Spotify API before, developer.spotify.com, you can have a dashboard, and then you can create as many applications as you want. I set one up for us ahead of time, and I also pulled my client and secret into these two functions. Good news, Alice on our team is working on secrets, so there will be secrets management in the product very soon, as soon as she merges that, which I'm excited about, but in the meantime, keep using them in functions. And then I also within here have added the redirect URL to redirect to the canvas that we were working in. I wanted to start with kind of the classic thing you start with every time you're using an outside API. I know these are a pain, and this is why we try to wrap as many of them in the package manager as possible, and I'll try to get one up for Spotify too, but it's always good to know how they actually work individually. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start by going through and using the authorization endpoint to get a code and then redirect back. So let's head over to Dark, and I'm going to do this in HTTP handler. I'm just going to make this at my base route, and I'm going to use our built-in HTTP client library to get, and that's the URL, query, and headers. So let's look at what else we need from this doc. Query parameter, we need our client ID and our response type and our redirect URI. So let's do that. Let's look at that formatting. Client ID, Spotify client. That's why it's nice to have them there. And then it was response type, that code. And then it was redirect URI, which was, let's do the one I already had, which is sample/Spotify, June 12th. The reason I'm making this in the sample directory is if you're watching this after the fact, you want to see the finished application, you'll be able to head over there and do so. So philipdark.com/oauth redirect. State optional, I'm not gonna worry about this. And then scopes. Okay, let's pick a scope. Scopes. Let's do user read recently played and user read currently playing. And I think it said it wants these with a space separated list. All right. User read currently playing. Okay, back to our API documentation. This seems pretty good. And then what format do we need? Trying to figure out if we want it to be JSON or form type. This one's form type. Let's just run it and see what happens. So leave that empty. And so one of the cool things about working with APIs within Dark, talked about this before, is you can actually run this interactively and see the result. So instead of having Postman open, I can just do this right here. I do get a response. I guess what I can do is I can actually open this in the browser. That's not what I wanted. Okay, so we can see that we're getting back this location, which I believe we want to open this location. Response. And you can see that I am working with my actual response. I get my live value here that shows me what it is. And so I think I want response.body.location, no, like headers. Perfect. Okay, let's try that once more. Oop, that's not what I wanted. That was my client. And there we go. Okay, so we're up and running. We're logged on as me. Let's agree, and we get a 404. This is pretty much how I do every single API when I'm setting this up from the beginning with auth or with anything else. And now we can see in our 404 section, we have this OAuth redirect, which gets us to our next step in the documentation. So let's see what we do next. Step 2, request, refresh, and access tokens. Okay, so I've gotten, did we get a code back when we got here? We did get a code. Okay, so let's pull that out. Nope, not body request.query params. Yep, that code. We have our code, and now we're going to make a post to this route. Post there. All right. Move that out of the way because we don't really need it. And again, if you're following along, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to chat about anything while we're doing it. And we want this to be in form encoded. So our header is going to be form encoded. All right, yep, form content type. And then we're going to ask for a grant type authorization code. Was it underscores or was it? Yes. Authorization code, step 1. And then the code that we get back is code. And the redirect URI, validation only, must match the one supplied when requesting the authorization code. Okay, so .com/auth redirect. Got that. And then we, okay. And so then we need this. So we're going to need an authorization header. So let's create an auth header. And it looks like we're going to need a base64 encoded string that contains the client ID and client secret key. It must have the format authorization basic base64 encoded client ID secret ID. Okay, so I think there's a base64. Yes, string base64 encode. And then our string looks like it's supposed to be client ID, so Spotify client ++ colon. Is that right? Yeah. Oh, actually, let's do this first. The reason I'm doing this is precedence is still something that has a few pieces of wonkiness, and so I don't want to end up in a situation where it tries to string encode this and then does the concatenation after the fact. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make the string first, which is Spotify client ++ colon ++ Spotify secret, and then I'm going to encode that. And so then we should get this. Yes, okay. And then we actually are going to need basic in front of that. So I'm gonna do that first. Basic, space, ++, and then that. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to dict merge this. One thing about pipes, again, if you're going to be piping something, I particularly use this for headers a lot. I'm going to dict merge it with the second header. And to do that, I'll do that. And this is not a header yet. So in the dictionary. Is that right? Yes, cool. And so what I really like about this is I can actually see what I'm doing because I wasn't sure if that would be right, but that looks like that's right. And then we don't need a query. And so let's see if we get back tokens. We do! Success! Okay. I actually was not expecting that to go quite smoothly as it did. Frequently, I will spend a lot of time trying to debug things like that. So let me just put this into a variable so we can work with it. If you haven't seen the command palette before, it's control backslash. I'm going to wrap let. And now I want to save this, but one of the things that's kind of funny about this for some reason, in Spotify in particular, is it doesn't actually tell you who authorized you. So if you want the username, you have to make another call for the current user. Let me see if I have that doc open or not. I do. Okay. So to be able to do this, you have to call the me endpoint to get the current user's profile. So let's do that. Get current user's profile, and we need to pass in a valid access token. And so we have the access token. I think that's it. So let's do an HTTP call. Let's do let username equal HTTP client get v1 query, and then I'm trying to remember, do we need the headers? All right, we're done with that. So let's get rid of that one. Done with that. Header field authorization, and we have to send a valid access token. Okay. Field authorization, I think it's just the token. Okay. Let's try it. Error. Only valid bearer authentication supported. Ah, okay. So the auth header wants a bearer token. Should have known that. And then response.body.access token. Let's try it again. Bad URI. Why did we get a bad URI? Yes, that's Spotify v1. /me. Somehow we lost that part of our URL. All right, let's try it. One more go. Display name Ellen Chisa. So there we go. And then I'm just going to use a quick lambda to do, we just want the username. Display name. Yep, perfect. Okay, so now what we've got is we've got our token response and we've got our username, and let's put that into a data store. I'm making a data store called tokens, and let me think about what I want to put in this. So username is going to be what we store them under, and our response has a access token and expires in. Okay, we're going to have to make this a little easier. It's an int, a refresh token. Yes, I will be de-authing this after. A scope and a token type. It looks like we didn't get back a scope for some reason. We requested scopes. Maybe I have to do it again here. Invalid grant. Let's do the whole thing over and see what happens. All right. This stream up will be able to view my data. I agree, but I don't think that's right. I wonder what's wrong. Or this is scope instead of scopes. Ah, yeah, there we go. Approve. Okay, great. Now we should get back our scopes that we actually want. Response scopes. Okay, well, let's just finish. We'll call this success, and we'll see what happens when we actually do this one more time. There's a new tab. We get a success. All right, I'm gonna go with it's probably fine. Okay. Didn't move to the most recent trace, a very important part of doing this. Okay, one more go. We've got our code, to encode, auth header, response. We get our tokens. We have our scopes this time. Yay! Okay, we got our username. Yes, this would definitely work for any OAuth app. Generally, like everyone's flow has like its own weird nuances, which is why I end up building a bajillion of them and why we try to wrap them. But this is pretty similar to any API integration you would do. We have another video up that's about how to do it with Slack too. Okay, so got our token type, and there's one more thing that was in this response. Oh, nope, that's it. Cool. Okay. And so now what we want to do is instead of doing success, we want to first set it. We don't yet have statements in the language, so if I want to do a DB set and I want to be able to return something else later, I need to do the let underscore on the left, which is basically how to do a statement. I'm going to use the username is my key, and then my value is going to be my response.body. That should be the right fields. Yep. All right, so let's add me into our data store. Success. And if you haven't done this before, a helpful thing for understanding the structure of these is if I run db get all with keys, you can see it's now Ellen Chiza is the key, and then it has this record for all of the things associated with what I'm doing. Cool. So then we'll say successfully authorized Spotify application. Cool. Okay, so we've now got that. So this is full OAuth flow working for Spotify, and now we can use our tokens to use other more fun parts of the API. So we've got a profile, and let's do, I guess let's do recently played maybe. We asked for that. Okay, here's our API. And let's do this within Dark as a handler. So get, and let's get profile recently played. And then we're going to do HTTP client get from here. And then let's see what else we need. Get recently played header. We need a valid token. And we need the scope. Is that it? Query parameters, optional. And what format does it need to be in? All right, maybe it doesn't have to be in a specific format. So let's get our user, db get profile from tokens, and then we'll want to do, okay, fine, we'll work from a trace. I think a funny thing is like you eventually get sloppy when you get used to having the traces. So this will actually give us a profile, Ellen Chiza, and then val.access token. Cool. Okay, it's got the token. We don't need a query, and then we need the header is bearer token, right? Yeah, bearer token. Okay, let's try that. Seems to have worked, so let's open that in a new tab. Yep, we've gotten back a ton of information from the Spotify API. Okay, now we're gonna have to figure out how to work with this to actually figure some things out. I think to do that, I'm gonna use this limit parameter, minimum 1, maximum 50. Let's make it 2. Yep, okay, cool. Much shorter response, which will make it a little bit easier to work with. I will say, eventually you can get to traces that are large enough that the editor becomes non-performant. And so if you're running into that using any particular API, I definitely recommend seeing if there's a way to do a limit or like do some sort of pagination so you only get a few. Unsurprisingly, apparently the last thing I listened to is Taylor Swift, which sounds like me. Yes. Ooh. Something broke. All right. And we're back. 2. Okay. And so I'm just going to make this my response so it's a little easier to work with it. So I think it's going to be response.body dot items. Shows before after items. Okay. And then I'm going to have to list map that, and then val dot track dot. Aha, there we go. Now these are the 2 most recent songs that I've listened to. So we have a working endpoint where if I open this as myself, enchanted, New Year's Day. And now if we change it to 50 and we go over here and refresh, ta-da, we now have, this is like, yeah, all of the songs I've listened to recently. Some Kesha, some Lizzo, some more Taylor Swift, some Broadway musicals. Cool. So there you go. That's a working version of the recently played API that's now up, and I guess it is working OAuth. So if for some reason anyone else wants to go over and put their token in, you too can see your recently played things on Spotify or put them up for someone else to look at. Not really sure why you would want this feature, but if you did, you could definitely do something with it. You can see here, I just did a count to see if anyone else had done it, but no one has. All right, what else should we do? I guess we should go find another API to play with. I guess we could do the same thing, but with currently playing. So let's grab this one. Looks like everything's optional again. So I think we're basically going to write the same exact code. And so I might just copy the whole thing. Except instead of that, I want this one. Where did the URL go? This is recently played. This is currently played. You can't really parse HTML within Dart yet. It doesn't work very well. So like I usually end up, yeah, not there yet. Sorry. Okay, switch that out. I think I don't need this limit. Bear token. Nice it. Let's give it a go. Where I name it current? Did I name it current? Yeah, so let's use this /current. Ooh, invalid code. Something's wrong. What is wrong? Token response dot item. Oh, of course. Let's do that. Nice. Well, we got a response, but it doesn't have anything in it, which maybe it's because I'm not currently playing anything. So let me play something on Spotify on my phone and see what happens. I guess we'll go with some Taylor Swift because, yep, there we go. All right. Now we have a response and we can figure out what we want. I think we want dot item, no, the body dot item. Yep, dot name. Deep well. Oh, someone else off. This is someone else's music that isn't me. let's double check that and make sure that's true. Yeah, cool. That's neat. All right, so when we head back over here, and we'll do mine again. Should be Cruel Summer. All right, I don't know. Now we've got an API that will tell us what we've recently played and will tell us about what's currently playing. I have played with these before because I wanted to make sure that we would at least have something interesting to look at, but now let's go look at some other stuff in here and see what we can do. I guess we could try to follow someone. I could follow a playlist. I could unfollow a playlist. I could follow an artist. Ooh, I could skip to the next track. That sounds fun and creepy. It could be like Twitch plays Pokemon, but instead of Twitch plays Pokemon, it could be Screw Up Ellen Spotify. Part of why I'm fine with this is that I actually have a really hard time listening to music while working. Post? Did that already? Yeah, post. Post to that, and then what do we need? Just the auth again. This is great. So basically, we will literally do the same thing. Let's do that. There's still some copy paste weirdness. Let me see if this works. Let token, okay, close enough. Get to profile tokens. It would work if I copy pasted the whole blob, so I probably should have just copy pasted the whole blob to save myself the situation. Okay, and then I guess I'll want that. Let's say that they skipped a track, and I think that's all we need. Authorization, optional. All right, let's give it a go. My expectation when we do this is that what's going to happen is that it's not going to skip because we don't have that scope on. Not found. Okay, yeah, we got the profile back, and then yes, permission's missing. You can see this is kind of cool. The reason it says not found is what's happened is this goes to the error rail. And so the error rail are these things that appear here on the right. And so in this case, when we're getting our token back out of the data store, it is a round circle because we actually got one back. So it's a just. And if we wanted to, we could match on if the user existed or not. So let me pull that off for you and show you what that would be like. So it's take function off rail. And so now you can see we have a just. And now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to wrap in a match the rest of this code. And so I'm going to go here and I'm going to delete that. And now I'm going to instead, I'm going to use the command palette again, and then I'm going to wrap in match arm. And so I'm going to match token. And if I get just token, I'm going to do the post, and then I'm going to wrap this in a let. Refactoring, still a little annoying, but you can see here now that I can have the two logic. So if I get just token back, did we get, okay. This is definitely a type of refactoring that's still a little bit frustrating. So token, so now we have this, got that back, match token, just token, token dot access token, wrap and let. Okay, and then what we're going to do is post our token. Great. Okay, So this should still work. And then after this, again, we'll want to wrap this whole thing in a let. And then say success. And then nothing, user does not exist. The profile does not exist, I guess, to match our URL schema. Cool. Okay, let's do this again. It's still going to fail, but I think it's going to spell slightly differently. So we still get a not found. And so you can see that we have the same thing. So instead of the option type in our data store, this is the result type, which wraps an OK or an error. And we're getting an error response back because we're missing permissions. And so I could pull this off the rail and like handle this again to like say that we're missing permissions. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go change our scopes. And I guess I want to have remote control. I think I want this. Let's try this one. Okay, so we're gonna have to re-auth as me again. Agree. So it's successfully authorized. And now I believe when we call our skip endpoint, all right, what's wrong this time? Still permissions missing, really? Oh, user modified playback state. Cool. We go re-auth it again. Okay. And let's try it again. Not found. No active device found. Okay, so let's turn on our device. And let's do it again. Oh man, this is so cool. I understand that this is like silly and not terribly useful, but it is pretty neat. Okay, I'm gonna stop refreshing that endpoint now, but that's fun. Cool, okay. That was enjoyable. If anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to keep talking about things. Otherwise, I think we're kind of hitting the end of what's fun to do with this, or if anyone has suggestions for stuff they'd like to specifically see from the Spotify application, happy to do it. I can also show you, there is, the reason this is sample Spotify June 12th is there is also a sample Spotify. And I believe this is a sample that Alice built for a launch party back at Strange Loop. And what it did was it allowed people to add to a public playlist that we played during the party. And you can see it uses like a lot of the similar things. You can see here that this is the auth work that we did before. And then here's the redirect where you get the codes. And then here's a search API finding songs, and then here's the ability to add songs to that. And here's a cron that refreshes the token once an hour. That is one thing that's a pain about this. The tokens do expire once an hour. And so that is definitely a thing that cron is worth looking into. I guess I could just directly take this cron. All right. I'm gonna move this over to mine. And this will give us an excuse to use cron too. So you can see so far I'm doing all API endpoints. If you want to do API calls that aren't blocking, you can emit them to a background worker, but then you can't wait on them to return. So all of these I wanted to do in line. But let me grab a cron, every 1 hour, refresh tokens, and then there's that. Our client ID is actually Spotify client. Our market secret is Spotify secret. And then I would have to do this for every user, but I'm just going to do it for myself because I'm lazy. And then call it refresh token. And you can see some of these. Upgrade breaks it. That's a bummer. Okay, I should use B5, and I guess I'll just use them side by side. Oh, and this is actually just the header we were using before, our like auth header, so I can get that. Here we are. Yeah. I would also like that. Yes, thank you. I don't need these two. Hi, Alice. Alice is the person who originally wrote this, wrote the other Spotify thing that I'm using. Cool. Great. Okay. Auth header, and then authorization auth header, and then okay. I think that should work. Invalid request, refresh token must be supplied. Oh. Success. Okay. And we get back the whole thing. So we want to set the GB. I think it's just request response.body. And that has access token, expires in refresh token. It does not have a refresh token. Access token expires in refresh token scope token. Great. Okay. And our key is our, well, it's just me in this case, and then tokens. Boop. Okay. So now what should happen is that my token should end up getting refreshed once an hour. See how that goes. That works. And you can choose to manually execute your cron whenever you want. Again, I mentioned this at the beginning, but we have new docs that talk about the guarantees around, not guarantees, the general performance behavior around workers and cron, if you want to take a look at them. So now we should always be able to skip my music ahead by going to this. And I look forward to people trolling me on this. It'll be a lot more fun than everyone just texting me to check into my office, which is what happens now. Cool. All right. I mean, unless we have any more questions coming in, I think I'm going to stop there. Feel good. We've got a refreshing token service. We have the ability to mess up playlists. I guess we could do this for every single user, but that seems tedious. So I'm not going to do that right now. So with that, I'm going to close us off, and I hope you all are having a good day. Talk to you later.